Hello, we're Bob and Megan, Sean and Moran.
We are the authors and developers of the coaching model known as evocative coaching. Our first book, Evocative Coaching, Transforming Schools One Conversation at a Time, that was oriented around coaching teachers. And we developed our model there. We went on from there to apply that model to coaching school leaders. And that was in our book, Evoking Greatness, Coaching to Bring Out the Best in School Leaders. We are really happy to have done that.
Yes, because coaching is increasingly recognized as an essential leadership skill, and coaches are playing an increasingly important role in schools. Coaching is a form of relationship-based professional development, but different forms have different emphases. And we, in this graphic, have arranged it around two axes: the problems, whether we focus more on problems or more on possibilities, and whether we do more telling or more asking. And you can see that coaching falls in the quadrant where we're doing more asking than telling, and we're focusing more on possibilities than problems. It's not all that we're doing. We move into some of the other quadrants, but our primary focus is on asking about possibilities. Yes, thank you. So there are 5 things that concerns for coaching. They all happen to start with C words. There's a lot of powerful C words in education right now, aren't they? But the first is that we want to raise a consciousness or awareness in the person who we are coaching, so that they're paying attention differently to the just regular, ordinary parts of their work life and imbuing them with a sense of meaning and purpose because of the quality of awareness that we're bringing to those tasks. We also would like to have a sense of connection, both between ourselves and the person we're coaching, but also that they, to enhance through the conversations, through the questions we ask, enhance their sense of connection with those that they work with. We, of course, want to increase their competence. We want to build capacity through the quality of conversations that we have with the people that we are coaching, so as to enhance the contribution they make through their professional lives. And then we also want to generate some creativity. We want to cook up some creative new solutions to old ways of doing things.
If they aren't creative, they're not going to work.
Yeah, so anyway, we have some fun with that too. And so before we begin our coaching conversation, we want to pay attention to how we're showing up. Bob has written that very often the most important moment in a coaching conversation is the moment
right before it starts.
That's exactly right. That's a moment where we have to get focused, to really think about the how we're showing up and our intention for this coaching process. And because our definition of coaching is to bring about motivation and movement in the people that we coach, we do that through conversation and a way of being. So our way of being is going to influence how the coaching goes. And so we want to pay attention to our energy. What's the kind of energy that we are bringing to the coaching conversation? And one thing that we want to pay attention to is bringing a sense of calm assurance to the coaching conversation, so that we have this sense, there's a saying in coaching that my confidence is stronger than your doubt. We want to show, and we want to build a sense of self-efficacy with the people we're coaching through our belief.
The beginning is the time for 4 deep breaths.
Yes, exactly. And for us to set aside anything that is taking us out of that place of calm. So, if we've had a stressful day or we've had a difficult interaction just before a coaching conversation, part of that 1 minute right before it begins is a minute for us to just set that aside. I'll come back to that later. But for now, as I approach this coaching conversation, I want to embody a sense of calm. And then we also want to bring a sense of playfulness or lightheartedness, even though the work that we're doing and the consequences of what's happening in our classrooms and our schools are very, very serious.
Important.
They really are. But that doesn't mean that we have to approach it with a sense of seriousness or kind of gloom and doom all of the time. In order to really have that sense of creativity, bringing a sense of playfulness can help. Now, not all times and everywhere. As we get into empathy, if somebody is really in pain, we don't want to say, ha, 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 isn't everything great? But we want to look for those opportunities when we're really trying to find creative new solutions where we bring a sense of playfulness. And then we also want to convey a sense of openness to possibility, that there are new solutions, that the answer is in the room and we can find it and we can move forward together.
So the model that we developed is mapped out on something called a Mobius strip. And it's really a lot of fun to play with. Not sure if you've ever played with one, but we developed it with 4 movements: listen, empathize, appreciate, design. And you can see that on the Mobius strip, we have the words story. So that's what we're listening for.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're empathizing because that story can have all kinds of energies associated with it. And empathy means that we're connected at that level where if they're really happy and excited, we can be happy and excited.
Yes.
And if they're sad and struggling, we can make sure that our energy is stronger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get through what we call the
no fault turn. So we think of this as sort of a dance, coaching as a dance, where we gracefully want to move in and out of these different dance steps. So we don't sort of march through them in a wooden kind of fashion, but bring a sense of graciousness. And so our first dance turn is these first 2 movements.
And the second one is what we call the strengths building turn.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gone through no fault. People haven't heard any judgment from us. And so then we can move into strengths building. We appreciate the best about them and we design an experiment that we can work with to make things better.
Exactly. So before we begin, though, we want to check in with people. And we like to do this in this creative kind of way. You want to tell about that?
Sure. I love that picture. What we ask people to do is if they're going to describe their energy.
We do it in a kind of, we use metaphors to invite them to give us some information about how they're showing up in this particular moment.
Yeah, we ask them if they were to describe their energy as a color, what color would it be? Or if they were to describe their energy as a number on a scale of 1 to 10, what number would it be? We have all kinds of ways in our book that describe this creative energy check-in.
And it's really important for us to get some information right at the beginning of our coaching conversation about how they're showing up, so that, as Bob said, we could adapt our energy to what's going on with them. If they say their energy is an 8 or a 9, then we know, hey, they're ready to work.
Yeah.
But if they say it's a 2 or a 3, then we know there's some things that are going on that are draining their energy, taking away from their energy, and that those probably need some empathy. We need to pay attention to that and not just plow ahead with, hey, how things go in the experiment we cooked up last time. And likewise, if we say, for example, what's if your energy right now had a theme song, what would be the song? And if they say, here comes the sun, we're going to know they're really ready to get creative and think of new things.
The things are going to come out.
And if they say it's a somebody done somebody wrong song, then we think, oh boy, here's a story here. And we should probe into that. So then we move into, once we've established that connection through the creative energy check-in, then we invite them to tell a story. And early on in a coaching relationship, these might be longer term stories. How did you come to have the role that you have currently? Or what have been some shining moments or some highlights for you in this role? Once we get into a coaching cycle, then the stories may focus more on how did you grow from the experiment that we cooked up the last time? What new insights emerged? And then how can we build on those? And then from those stories that we hear, we want to express empathy. And empathy, in our view, we define as a respectful understanding of another person's experience. This means not sympathy, which is emotional contagion. If they're hopping mad about something that's happened, if we join them in that anger, then we both may have diminished problem-solving capacity. So as coaches, we want to express empathy. We really want to hear them for what their experiences have been, but to maintain our calm stance so that we can help them to find ways to move through that. And our process of empathy is based in a process called compassionate communication that was developed by a man named Marshall Rosenberg. And we have found this to be a very powerful model.
Many people have in many different realms, not just educational coaching.
True. So Marshall Rosenberg brought to our awareness that once we have some emotions stirred up, we have two choices. One is to correct and the other is to connect. If we decide to wag our finger at the person who's upset us or whose behavior we're not enjoying, we can get into playing the game of who's right. And this can be a trap because we can go around and around and around. As soon as we're wagging our fingers, the other person is likely to want to defend themselves, and we move back and forth and back and forth.
This is important for teachers too with their students.
True. These are some skills that then can be expanded upon. As coaches, if somebody is moving in, if we're noticing that they're playing the game of who's right, we don't wag our fingers at them and say, you're playing the game of who's right, but we offer some empathy. And so we can move back to this other path, the path that opens the realm of possibility. And we can do this through connection and the exploration of what are the feelings and needs that have emerged in that situation. And we have some resources, some lists of words for feelings and words for needs.
Yeah, in our book and in our model.
Mm-hmm.
There are those resources available.
Right. And so with all of that, our ambition, our hope is to open the realm of possibility. And then we're waiting. And then
what are we listening for?
Well, if the story we've heard, we think is especially juicy story, and we think there's more insights to be gained from that
with
story.
Lots of possibilities. If we work with that story just a little bit.
Yes, we can invite them to go back into the story and play with it in one of these three ways. So the first way is what we call vantage points, which is inviting them to retell the story in the voice of another person in that story. So, and very often that takes a little coaching because they'll say, well, she would have said that, or he might have said that. But we say, no, just speak it as if you were that person. And it is really amazing how much people can get into that and really speak passionately from another person's point of view. And then they come out of it and they go, wow, well, no wonder
we can do that with ourselves. We don't even need the coach there. We can play with our own stories.
Well, true. But as coaches, we really want to invite the insights that can come from this. Another way we might play with the stories is what we call pivot points, which is just inviting them to think about any point in the story where and just imagine having made a different decision. And this is not a place for us to point out, oh, here's where you went wrong. We don't choose the pivot point, but our point here is to really encourage them to be aware that we all make hundreds of decisions in the course of the day. And that just making small adjustments, small changes to the decisions we make can impact
Right.
our
And
outcomes.
sometimes small adjustments can generate big results.
Exactly. And then after perhaps after we played with these, or we might just go directly to lesson points, is to really invite some reflection on what have we learned from this story, from playing with this story. And we think, if this story were a fable, what would the moral of the story be? So what are we taking away from this story? And through all of this story, listening and expressing empathy, we are watching for and waiting for this beautiful, beautiful moment that we call the golden sigh. So, right, we might hear an exhalation of breath. We might see the shoulders drop, maybe a leaning in, maybe a bobbing of the head. But this lets us know that the person feels heard. They feel that their experience has been respected.
That connection is real and alive.
And that's the moment we're waiting for, because that's a signal that it's time to move into the second turn of our model, the strengths building turn.
The strengths building turn moves on to where we appreciate their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
What do they have to play with? What do they have to work with as educational leaders? And it's amazing when we see that and we assist them to see that, we can appreciate all kinds of possibilities.
And we have tapped into a beautiful process called appreciative inquiry. And growing out of that, we might do an inquiry into what we call the SOAR analysis, or SOAR inquiry, where we're exploring what are their strengths, what are their opportunities, what are their aspirations, and then what resources are there and available to them.
SOAR.
That's
strengths, opportunities,
aspirations, and resources.
There we go. Or results.
It could be. Yes, exactly. So then we also have tapped into a body of knowledge that many of us are familiar with, which is the design thinking process. And to do that, to tap into that design thinking, we want to build what we call a smarter experiment.
And so we work with them on using this outline for how they could design an experiment to generate great results. And they summarize, we ask them to say, well, if I were to do this, here is my hypothesis as to what might happen.
Yes, to think through those changes.
And they then talk about, with our assistance, the relevance of this.
Your hypothesis to the standards or professionals standards that they might be working for. And then we're going to do some brainstorming, cook up some strategies for moving forward.
Obviously we need strategies because we have to get from here to there. And one of the things that will be always important in an experiment is how long do you go into the lab? What's the timeline that the experiment is going to be utilized in? And we then assist them to talk about the things that will support them in conducting their experiment. What are the systems? What are the resources in their school system that they can use to design their experiment and conduct it? And the data collection part of this whole process is how are they going to know they're successful? Yeah, what would happen if they were to make a transformational change? Isn't that what we're looking for? And when it's all designed, when the whole experiment is mapped out and written out and conducted in such a way that they have that energy on their tongue tip, we then ask them to summarize their confidence level on a scale of 0 to 10. If your confidence for conducting this experiment was a number between 0 and 10, how high would it be? And who knows what they'll come up with. And if they use a low number, we ask them what would assist you to make it a higher number. And if they do a high number, we ask them, well, why did you pick such a high number? Isn't that great? And once again, though, we always talk about resources that can assist them to make that experiment great.
And so once we finish up our coaching session, they have an experiment that they're ready to go out and conduct. Then this becomes the beginning of a new story to tell. So the next time we are with them, we'll invite them to explore how did you grow? What were the insights that emerged
What
from
did
this
you learn?
experiment? Yes. So that's our model, and in brief, a brief overview. If you'd like to know more, please visit our website at schooltransformation.com. You may already be there. That's how you came to see this webinar. But there are a number of free resources that we make available there.
You can read our book, Evoking Greatness.
And Evocative Coaching.
Yes, both of them.
Or you can contact us at info@schooltransformation.com. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.